Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. And as always, this is my co-host, Matt Freeman. How's it going, Matt?
Ooh, slugs.
What?
You want some slugs? Ah, they're everywhere. Here, take them. Take them in your bare hands.
Okay, I'll trade you for this marble I made. It's dirt and spit.
Awesome.
Folks, we have an absolutely stuffed show for you this week. Matt, I think this is one of our longest list of things we have to talk about in a long time. It's crazy. First, we're going to continue our Deconstructing director series where we're currently diving deep into the films of Guillermo Del Toro. This week, we'll be talking about Del Toro's third feature, The Devil's Backbone. Then, Matt and I have to talk about some more Mandalorian after last week's huge episode, and then some arguments that we're probably going to have about that. And then we've got some more news to discuss that broke just today about the state of the film industry and the theater industry. Crazy things are happening. And then at the very end of this episode, we're going to fight.
Yeah.
We're going to fight.
This is going to be the most bitter and acrimonious argument that we've ever had on the air.
We go fight.
Yeah.
One of the things that people have said about us in the past, Matt, is that they would like our shows better if we actually argued more. And it's not to say that we always agree on everything, but I think in the places that we disagree, we're normally just like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care. But not today. Not today. Perhaps the most important argument we've ever had in the history of the show will occur at the very end of it.
Yeah. All right. And without further ado, let's get on into The Devil's Backbone.
All right. Let's talk about Deconstructing Del Toro, Episode 3, The Devil's Backbone.
¿Qué es un fantasma?
¿Quién suspira?
Un evento terrible condenado a repetirse una y otra vez.
Quedan 10 lingotes más.
No tienen padres. No tienen a nadie.
Están desesperados de hambre. Mira cómo comen.
¿Qué ves ahí abajo?
Matt, what is The Devil's Backbone about?
After Carlos, a 12-year-old whose father has died in the Spanish Civil War, arrives at an ominous boys' orphanage, he discovers the school is haunted and has many dark secrets, which he must uncover.
Oh, and uncover them he will. The Devil's Backbone was directed by Guillermo Del Toro, and it was written by Del Toro, Antonio Trashores, and David Munoz. It was released in 2001, and it is another Spanish language film, although this one, as Matt said, takes place in Spain, not in Mexico. So Matt, talk to me about this movie. You had never seen this one before, right?
I had never even heard of this movie.
All right, what did you think of The Devil's Backbone?
Oh, I liked it quite a bit. It's I will say of the type of movie that I tend to like, where it's, there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of care and thought put into sort of the idea behind what are we doing with each of these plot threads? What are we doing with each of these characters and symbols and setting? All of these things weave together into a coherent idea, a coherent theme that the movie is delivering, and it gives you a lot to think about. You stop watching the movie and then you kind of continue thinking about it. I will say, I guess, that in some places I'm unclear on what the movie was trying to say, but I usually don't hold that kind of thing against a work of art. I'm just like, I actually appreciate that it's making me ponder the questions in the first place. So yeah, overall thought it was quite, it was a great piece of art. It was quite entertaining. And I think I get why people like this Del Toro fellow. What did you think?
I absolutely loved this movie. This is one of the two Del Toro movies I had not seen. So from now on, we're officially into Scott has seen all the movies we're going to be covering territory, because it was Kronos and The Devil's Backbone. And this is unquestionably the best of these first three movies. I mean, I don't think it's even close. This movie felt to me like the first time I saw the person that Guillermo Del Toro will eventually become, the director that he'll eventually become, kind of with his hands free to do anything he wanted, right? Like we're in this interesting place where Kronos was his very first film. It was a very, very limited budget, and it felt like a movie that had these grand ambitions and just maybe just didn't have the possibility, whether it be financially or just it's still a filmmaker learning, to see it through to fruition. While I still very much enjoyed that movie, Mimic, as we discussed last time, was just an absolute mess of a movie in which Del Toro's vision felt like it was just being stepped on and stamped out at every pass. But this is a movie where, he's done 2 films, they've been moderately successful, and he's a better director now. He probably has a little bit more money. He probably has a production team that is a little bit more willing to give him some slack and let him make the movie he wanted to make. And that's what this movie feels like. This feels like a Del Toro picture fully realized. And it's everything that I love about the director all rolled into one. It takes this concept, basically. It takes this, we're going to do a Gothic story. This is a Gothic story in the old tradition of Gothic storytelling, but we're going to put it in the 1940s in the middle of nowhere in Spain, in the middle of the Spanish Civil War. And so it's a movie that's doing a lot of these old standard Gothic tropes, but in an interesting new way. And I think you're right. There's a ton going on in this movie. There's a lot for us to talk about here. And I think it works so well. And I was completely sucked in by everything Del Toro was doing here.
Great.
So where do we begin? Matt?
I don't know.
How about the beginning? That's actually, I think it is a great place to start at the beginning of this movie, because there is a very conscious choice here to make. The movie opens with this wonderful voiceover that basically kind of summarizes the theme for us, although we don't know it yet. We don't see how it actually is going to become the theme, but the opening lines are, what is a ghost? Is it a tragedy that is condemned to repeat itself? Is it an instant of pain, something dead which still seems to be alive, an emotion suspended in time, like a blurred photograph, like an insect trapped in amber? And so the answer is yes to all those things, right? And I think as we go through this discussion, every single thing in the story is in some ways fitting into that definition of a ghost. This is a ghost story, but it is not a story. There is not just one ghost in it.
Yeah.
There's not just everything. Everything is ghostly.
Yeah.
Everything is a ghost according to this definition.
I like that very much on the level, that intro that you just read. I like that very much on the level of he's basically saying, go, I don't know whether he believes magical, like real ghosts are real, like really real, but I think you sort of take it as, like, regardless of whether real ghosts are real, the vestige of some pain or some sin or some tragedy does linger in the world, and leaves a scar on the world, if you will. And so, like you said, there is a real ghost in this movie, but really you could almost take the ghost out of the movie and it would change nothing, right? Like that. Sure. I think that's by design. I think the point is all of the real ghosts are, some of the characters are ghosts. And
the ghost primarily functions as metaphor more than it functions as an active, key element of the storytelling. 100%.
I don't recall the ghost even giving them information that they didn't already have. It was more just like it sort of drew their attention to, like, the location of where the terrible sin had occurred. At most, which is And I mean, the moment where the ghost takes the most active role in the story is at the very, very end. And by then, like, you could even argue that Jacinto's death there is already happening. Like he's been stabbed multiple times. Yeah.
He's weighed down by the gold he was desperately seeking to collect.
Yeah.
And the ghost grabbing onto him and holding onto him as he drowns is like, there doesn't even have to really be a ghost, right? It doesn't even have to be real.
The ghost could just be a hallucination almost, and it would have the same effect. And then there's just so many. There's so many clever places, like the woman has basically phantom limb syndrome in her legs, or like her leg always hurts, and it's like, okay, that's another ghost. It's an echo. It's a psychic scar left by some pain. I don't think we learn why she lost her leg, but it doesn't really matter. It clearly sort of haunts her, and she has this whole, her whole affect as a character is just someone who's kind of like harrowed and like almost embittered by pain, some of which is physical, some of which is circumstantial, because she's been placed in this position that's so impossible.
Yeah, and then we have Dr. Casares, who's played by Federico Lupi, who is the actor from Kronos. I think we talked last time about how Del Toro absolutely loves this man, and he's going to put him in every movie he possibly can. And his ghost, I guess you could argue, is his unrequited love for Carmen. That he's been in love with this woman, and she has never shown him the time of day, at least not in the romantic way he wants it. And so. And then we have our villain, our antagonist, Jacinto, who's like haunted by his past in this place. He's like, we learned that he was an orphan that grew up in the same orphanage for 15 years, and he can't get away from it. He'll end up staying at it forever. And then I think our biggest one is the bomb in the middle of the courtyard, right? Like this is such a powerful image, and I loved it so much. The movie opens with we're seeing, as this voiceover is playing, we're seeing the orphanage from a plane's point of view as it drops a bomb on the orphanage to blow it up, and the bomb lands and it does not go off. And so it's like this whole image, this whole powerful image of this whole place. The bomb should have exploded. Everyone should be dead. The building should be dead and gone and collapsed, and it's still lingering on for some reason. And I like that they said that the bomb squad came out and disarmed it. And I don't believe that. I don't like, this place is so remote. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a full day's walk from anywhere. I just don't believe that the bomb squad would actually give a shit to come out here and make sure this bomb was, it sounds like something you tell the kids to make it so they don't worry about the thing, but I don't think that happened.
That didn't occur to me, but now that you've said it, I instantly accept it because because you get the sense that this war is in like the sort of the end phase where everything has just gone to hell, and
it takes place in 1939. So I think this is the last year of the war, a war in which the Republic, who is all the characters we're seeing in this movie are the point of view of the Republic fighting to keep Spain the way it was, to keep Spain as a Republican democracy, are losing, and they do in fact end up losing the war to the fascist regime. So yeah, they're in the death throes of their fight to keep their government and their country.
Yeah. I love that because the movie doesn't telegraph that one way or the other, but I think you almost have to be right because there's the motif that they keep walking up to the bomb and putting their ear to it and hearing like ominous ticking and talking sounds inside as if it's just waiting for its moment.
And the bomb is textually like linked to the ghost, right? It's linked to Santi because there's the time when he asks the bomb, Bomba, where is Santi? Where is the one who sighs? And the little thing flies off and points. So it's like they're connected, everything, because it's part of this place now. It's all become part of this place, and Santi is part of this place. Yeah. He's not just a ghost. He's the orphanage. He is the place. They're all. I think one of the things you and I were talking about before is how, and we'll get into the design of this ghost, which I think is just incredible, but he's crying iron oxide. He's crying rust from his eyes. And that matches perfectly with the rust. Like all the metal in this orphanage is rusting. The bomb itself is rusting. The pool that he drowns in like looks like it's just like inundated with this rust color. It's man, the color and the mood of this film are just extravagant in getting the tone across. It's just really wonderful work.
Yeah, the whole setting, even different rooms of the place have very different moods depending on whose room is this. The giant open chamber, the vaulted chamber where all the boys sleep versus the bedroom of the old man versus like the attic room that he sits in at the end. Like they all kind of, they're all just kind of masterful examples of set design, and they all do seem like they're in the same building, but they also all have the character of the particular scene that they need to contain.
Yeah, and they all manage to be very gothic too. Still, it's part of that style, right? Especially the I don't even know what the basement room is with that pool in them. I don't know what that is, but the ceilings are very vaulted there. It just looks like a castle. Like it looks straight out of like any kind of gothic horror story that you would see in the 1800s. It's just perfect.
Yeah, it looks very old. I was going to ask what. Like there has to be some purpose why you would have a big open. They call it the pit, right? And it's like, what is this for? I mean, surely there's some reason. Like this must be a real thing. I just don't know.
Yeah,
what it is.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it seems industrial. Like, it seems like there's some sort of, not mining, but there's something going on down there.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, this is an orphanage, right? But it seems like it's a repurposed building to become an orphanage. So I don't know what it originally was at whatever one point.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of in Del Toro fashion, there's a bunch of Christian iconography. So perhaps there was something church or monastery-ish about this originally.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it's located in the middle of this just like vast, flat, like salt pan desert too, which is also a great, a great setting touch.
Yes, yes.
I wonder if this place exists. Like, is this a real building that they, or did they build it for the movie?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Legitimately wonder. Just before we move on from the bomb, one other thing I thought of is like it serves as a really great red herring, because you've got this what you kind of assume is a live bomb sitting in the middle of the orphanage, and then you start getting all these ominous warnings that many people are going to die and there's going to be something terrible, and you think, okay, the bomb's going to go off at some point. And but no, it's a misdirect. It's not the bomb. There's a completely different explosion that kills a lot of people.
Yeah. It was a really good misdirect, and I think like it slots in so well with the theme of the movie, which is that, like, because I mean, at some point I was like, okay, surely the bomb's going to go off at the end of the story, and it's going to destroy the orphanage, and that will be like this symbol of the past being moved on from, right? That like we're moving on from this. And I think one of the things the movie says is these things don't just get to be moved on from. Like all the ghosts, like Santi at the end of this movie gets his revenge. The ghost gets what the ghost wants. And it's not like the ghost gets to go up to heaven now, right? Like in so many ghost stories, at the end of the thing, we see it's still there. It's still there hovering over the pit. The ghost isn't going anywhere. It's trapped here. This is just what happens. This is what, like, the thematic ghosts of the story don't just go away. If you get revenge, or you get what you want, or none of it just goes away. It's still there.
I think that's a great opportunity to talk about Del Toro and how it's almost like for him the story of the Spanish Civil War is a kind of ghost that torments him. And I'm saying this really based on what I know of the man, which is very little, but he's made 2 films about the Spanish Civil War, both of them thematically very similar, and we're going to obviously talk about this again and probably more when we get to Pan's Labyrinth. But like, he seems like a man who feels like this historical event is more than just a historical event to him. I think it seems to carry some kind of weight, and he feels like he has to tell these stories about the injustices and the horrors that were committed. And then that is a kind of that fits the definition of a ghost according to the intro to this movie, right? It's something that happened long ago, but it for him it can't be put to rest.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation on Pan's Labyrinth after seeing this movie, because I think they are companion pieces to each other. And I think had I seen Pan's Labyrinth the first time, knowing that this movie existed and knowing what it's about, I think I would have appreciated that movie even more. But they are both, I mean, not to spoil that discussion, but they are both circling around this event and dealing with it in different styles, right? Pan's Labyrinth is a fairy tale. It is taking the structure of a fairy tale and attaching it onto this event. And then this movie is doing that same exact thing, but instead of fairy tale, it's gothic horror. It's kind of this Spanish gothic type tone and feel. And I love it. But I guess I think one of the most interesting things this movie does is show us the ghost like right away. Which I think is almost an inversion of the gothic trend. Like, I think Del Toro wants this to be like, I think a lot of gothic literature has a central mystery to it, right? And the mystery is usually revolving around a supernatural thing, like a ghost, like what killed this person, or how did they die, or why, or all these things. And that mystery is still here, right? The movie opens where we see the death of Santi, the kid that is the ghost. But we don't see how he died. We see his friend, who we'll later see is like the bully of our main character, Carlos, at some point in the movie, like standing over him and crying. So like, I don't know, I made the logical leap that Carlos killed him, because like we see shots of Carlos standing over him crying, then we see a shot of him being tossed into the pit, way down and tied down, and then we cut to Carlos, or to cut to what was his name? I don't remember the name of the other kid.
The other kid,
is it Jaime? I think it was Jaime, standing over him crying again. So we're like, oh, he's the one that hit the body. So I was like, oh gosh, is this kid? But that ends up not being the case. But one of the first things that happens when Carlos gets to the orphanage is we see the ghost right away in broad daylight. And then there's even a scene where we cut to the ghost, like where the camera leaves Carlos behind and cuts straight to the ghost standing there. So it's like Del Toro is not hiding the ghost from us. There's not a moment in the story where the ghost is revealed and we said, oh my God, there's a ghost in it. It's like he's right away like, this is a ghost story. He's telling you. And I think it's because his monster, the ghost in this story, is like we've already talked about, is not the antagonist, does not serve as the narrative plot device to move it forward. It's just a symbol, a representative of this place and what it is, and the pain of this place. Because the story moves independent of it. So we don't need to hide it from our characters. Right. We don't need to hide it from our audience. We just show it to you right away.
Yeah. Right. The normal way to do this would have been, that same scene, except, the boy, turns his head and there's like a shape sitting in the doorway, and then he looks away, and then back, and then there's nothing. And then it's like you slow burn build the existence of the ghost. But this violated all of those expectations. It shows you the ghost. It shows you that it is a ghost. It shows you the CGI, blood bubbling up and sort of the effect that the air takes on, where the air is basically full of like debris, as if underwater.
And the water reflecting like it does. It's. Can we? Can we talk about the design of this thing for a sec?
Yeah.
I think it's like my favorite part of this movie is the design of Santi the ghost. I think he's incredible, and there is CG here definitely, but I think the face itself is as a prosthetic. I think it's remarkable. I like, it's such a creepy design. Like he's got this porcelain white skin and it's cracking, right? Like it's not like this is not how skin actually behaves. It's like he's a porcelain doll that's been cracked in places. And I think the blood seeping out the head and going upwards as if he's in water constantly is such a good touch. His eyes are this really freaky kind of like inverted color where the iris is light, but it's so creepy looking. And then the fact that like you can see his skeleton, but like not always, like it's just kind of visible, sort of. Oh man, it's such a good. I love it. I love it.
And even the outfit that he's wearing, which is indeed the outfit that he died in. It's just this like posh school kid outfit where it just ends up looking really creepy on a ghost, and very gothic too. But yeah, like you were saying, the movie, like I think I was creeped out as I famously don't do well with horror movies. But I was really only creeped out during the scene where the two boys go to get the water, and sort of the scenes leading up to that. And then pretty much after that, I realized like, oh, okay, the ghost is not the antagonist. The ghost is just trying to tell them something. And then, pretty soon after that, the boy, Carlos learns the same thing. And then he's not afraid of the ghost either. So the movie, it gives you some amount of time of being scared, but it dispenses with that pretty quickly. And then you're not scared of the ghost anymore. And then almost immediately, like sleight of hand, it replaces that fear of the ghost with fear of like basically fear for the children about like, what is this loose cannon Jacinto planning? What is he going to do? And then he builds up into being a much scarier monster than the ghost ever was. And it turns out that he's the monster of the film.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a trend, right? Like in Kronos, the vampire was not the monster of the film. It was just the dude. It was just the man who through his greed and lust and his own trauma led him to do monstrous things. I think that's perfect because I do think Del Toro wants, like, he's a good writer and director, so he knows like your emotional wavelength, right? And he wants you to start the movie being afraid of the ghost, and then he wants you to casually, like, it's his goal to make it so you're not afraid of the ghost by the end of it, because he doesn't want you distracted by being afraid of this supernatural thing. He wants your fear to go where it belongs, which is the real monster of the story. And I think he navigates that pretty beautifully. And I mean, Jacinto is just this despicable character. And I think the thing that really, like, obviously the killing of Santi was horrid, but it was an accident, right? Like, he was being a dick. He didn't mean to kill the kid, though. He just pushed the kid, and the kid hit his head on the wall, and it's this freak accident type thing. But when he kills his fiance, is like, it's the opposite of the save the cat moment, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, and he does it. It's so wonderful. I think Jacinto is such a wonderful character because he's monstrous, but it comes from this place of just innate insecurity. And I loved the scene where he kills his wife, Conchita, because he does it because of the dudes behind him.
Yeah.
Like, it's like he's an adult now, but he's still acting like one of the kids in this orphanage where they're like peer pressure by the kids around. Like, you know, the scene where they're daring each other to go fill up the water bottles. Mm. That's basically what happens here, except his friends are daring him to kill this girl because he has to show that he's brave. He's a man. He's like, it's the same kind of emotional maturity there, where he has to do this for that reason and that reason only. And
yeah,
it reinforces just how despicable he is.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I definitely hated him more than many, you know, most fictional characters that I can think of. The movie very successfully made me hate this guy. And yeah, I liked what you just said about, you know, he's also a kind of ghost. I think, I don't remember if you included him on your list, but
yeah.
He's sort of a ghost of the orphanage because he's spent like most of his life there apparently, but he doesn't want to acknowledge it. But you know,
he's trapped in his past.
Yeah, exactly. He's trapped in his past. And you know, the movie, it's interesting because the movie gives him that moment later when he sees the photo, or he sees all the photos of like his family that I guess they all died because he is an orphan. And like he understands that there's something deeply wrong with him in that moment when he's looking at the photos. And you see him, you know, but for me, it didn't give me any sense of like feeling sorry for him, but it did impress on me like, well, in a sense, this guy is being portrayed as being a victim of this world. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the implication is that his parents died in the war, because surely that's not possible.
So. No, I think the Spanish Civil War is only a few years. So.
Yeah, but still, his parents were taken from him, and he was basically destroyed by this, and destroyed by you know, he was made into who he is by misfortune and tragedy, and you know, the not just the orphanage, but the original loss of his parents are what did this to him and made him into, you know, this revenant that he is now.
Ooh, good word.
Yeah.
I think I like that a lot, because I think there's a moment there where he's like, his two buddies are chastising him, and he's completely focused on this photograph, this blurred photograph, which of course ties directly into the opening paragraph, right? Like, what is a ghost? Is it a blurred photograph, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, it makes the metaphorical quite literal there to sell us on what it's doing. But there is a moment there where you think maybe he can get out of this, right? Like, maybe he can. He's already killed his fiance, so he's a jerk. But like, he's standing there looking at these photographs, and maybe he's finally realizing now that the gold is out of his grasp, that this is not the correct way to escape from his past. But then he sees the gold, right? This is what I love about it. Like, the gold has actually been hidden in Carmen's fake leg the entire time. And he sees a glint of it, and it's as soon as he finds the gold is the moment where his friends abandon him, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they don't realize that they're abandoning the guy who just found the gold, but it's just so, the timing is so poetic there. It's like, he had a choice. He was holding the picture in his hand, and he couldn't, the gold sucked him in, right? And then I think that's the wonderful thing at the end of the movie, is the gold is what pulls him down into the pit. The picture is it floating on the water or is it just off to the side? I can't remember. But we see one of the last shots of the movie is the picture still sitting there, and it's like that was his way out, versus the gold, which just weighed him down. Which I don't know about you, but as soon as I saw him like load up his pockets with that gold and like tie the sack around him, I was like, oh, he's gonna fall into the water and it's gonna suck him down.
Yeah, I think I did, because I felt pretty sure, like, the way this movie ends is they lure him down into the basement and they drown him because that's what the ghost wants. And I didn't think we were going to get subverted quite that hard. I did love the woolly mammoths, the humans hunting the woolly mammoth, and then that being used as a thing to talk about the kids' art. And then them sharpening stakes and hunting the adult man like he's a woolly mammoth was so great.
I mean, to me that's a symbol of a well-constructed film, right? When you have all these moments throughout that's set up where it's just like you get this good feeling of payoff at the end, because you're like, oh yeah, that was set up. We were kind of laying the seeds for that from the beginning.
Yep.
There's actually like there's a lot of places in here where I think the movie is like intentionally using Carlos and Jacinto to echo off each other. One of the ones I noticed on my second viewing is Carlos is abandoned at the orphanage in basically the exact same way Jacinto is at the end of the movie, where like the two people take off in a car without telling him and he's chasing after the car on his way out the front door. And like I think those shots are even constructed to like mirror each other exactly. I think it really does kind of show, I think what it's trying to show is that like they're the same in some way, or they started in the same place, and look at the way they diverged and why they diverged, because Jacinto was unable to leave this place, both literally and figuratively, metaphorically, and Carlos, as we see at the end of the thing, is able to walk away from it, is able to walk out the door and leave it behind, leave that part of his life behind. I think, I don't know, there's just beautiful imagery in that regard.
I like that. I hadn't considered that, but I like that a lot. I like how Carlos, when he comes to the orphanage, you sort of want him to be above the bullying. You sort of want him to be aloof from that, or somehow deal with it in a clever way. But actually, he just very much gets kind of sucked into it, and he plays the game. And you can imagine, that being the same path that Jacinto took. And it's not that you dislike him for it. It's just you're like, oh, okay, he's this kind of kid, and that's interesting.
I do think like the fact that he's able to kind of move on from just the bullying, contentious relationship to really bond with these kids, I think is really important too, because like we kind of learn that the reason Jaime was so like immediately hostile towards him is because he's dealing with a lot of his own shit, right? He watched his closest friend die, and so he's like generally afraid of making any close relationship with any of these people, and this new kid comes along who maybe they tried to do this intentionally, like made Carlos kind of look like Santi a little bit. Same basic size, same basic build. I think they got like the same haircut. And he's sleeping in his bed, and like you totally understand why he was so hostile towards him. And the Carlos does not let that permanently damage the relationship, and he ends up being as close as he possibly could be to all these kids at the end.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Is there? Am I reading too much into stuff to see the ways in which I think they were trying to make the kids kind of reflect some of the adults? Like I couldn't just help but seeing the one kid who by the end of the movie has twisted his ankle, so he's walking away from the orphanage limping and using a cane in like the exact same way Carmen used a cane and limped because of her leg. And I don't know, like it just like there seems to be a lot of parallels going on here between the children and the adults that they're leaving behind as they walk off. Maybe that's just me reading too much into it. I don't know.
Other than the fact that there's too many kids, I like that a lot. Because I mean, one of them, I think one of the kids carries the gun more than the others do. I don't remember which one.
I think it's Jaime. Santi's old friend.
So he kind of becomes the old man.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because he's the oldest. And I don't know what other parallels he has with him though, but it's interesting to think about. That's the sort of thing where I'm like, as soon as you say that, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's on some level intentional. And the more you think about it, I'm sure the cleverer it will seem, and that's the kind of thing I love about this movie.
Yeah,
just the way the kid is hamming it up with his limping at the end. I actually found it a bit distracting because I was like, I don't think he's going to make it very far across that desert flailing around like that.
That's a hell of a walk that they're going to have to go on there.
Yeah, like a 24-hour walk according to everyone, basically. So.
Yeah.
And they don't get the gold. The gold stays in the pit. That killed me. Yeah.
Of course, that's all you were thinking of.
Of course.
We just wasted all this gold.
All the gold, yeah. At least the ghost could have let them have the gold, but no.
Yeah, very inconsiderate of you, ghost.
Yeah, very selfish. What are you gonna do with it, huh? You got your revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
I loved, like, we talked about color a little bit, but I wanted to harp on this again because I think this movie uses the color red in a very similar way to The Sixth Sense did, M. Night Shyamalan did, where there is not very much red in this story at all. It's all like kind of everything's kind of sepia colored, right? It's all like this orangey, rusty, tan, dirt color. But there are a few key moments throughout the movie where red is kind of introduced into it, and it makes it pop more because the rest of the colors differ from it. Obviously, the blood coming out of Santi's head is one of them, but I love, there's a moment where Carlos picks up an apple. It's after the explosion has happened. It's after like the whole place is basically dying, and he finds this apple, and like on one side it's this beautifully bright red, and then he picks it up and turns it over, and the other side has been like charred and there's like a hole in it and it's rotting. And I think that's just this wonderful image right there of everything's going on here, that it's just rotting from the inside, and everyone's stuck. It's so good.
Yeah, I like that. It's a fun idea. Mm-hmm. I'm just not remembering any other real examples of the red, but
I mean, I think the streamers on the bomb, there was a couple of red streamers on the bomb, and of course the blood on everyone else, like the blood on Federico Lupi's when he's bleeding, he's dying and bleeding to death. It just pops a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just very effective, very effective.
Yeah. There's a lot of bleeding to death in this movie. Yeah. What else?
There is something. I don't know if I want to jump into this too much. There's something that felt a little Stephen King-y to me about the group of boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just because, like, I don't know. I love when people make a group of boys and they do that thing where there's one that has kind of a funny name and is a little bit different. Like, I love just the concept of Owl. Like, he doesn't say a lot, but he stares at you. And then the one kid's got the big goggles that he always wears. It's just like this kind of shorthand characterization that imprints these kids on your mind. Like, when this is a big orphanage, right? There's a lot of kids in this movie. It's a very broad cast, but there's only a few of them that matter to you. But like, when you haven't really gotten to know them yet and understand who they are as characters, it helps to have kind of a shorthand to understand who they are. And so, like, I think Del Toro wielded this, just like these important archetypal defining moments to really cement who these kids were in your head.
Sure.
And I think that's something that King does a lot in his groups of kid stories.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's just because I have Stephen King on the brain constantly, but
yeah, I mean, it also reminds me of like Sandlot, which is kind of the that whole thing. But you're right. You've got the good-natured, friendly kid. You've got the quiet kid. You've got the kid who at first seems like he's going to be an antagonist, but then you can tell that he's actually just wounded and lashing out, and very, very much doesn't do anything unforgivable before the turn, so that you find an easy time to forgive him, even though he has made the hero's life uncomfortable. All of these things are tropes of the kids on bikes genre, which there's no bikes in this movie, but there could very well be bikes in this movie.
It's not bikes, it's slugs. Kids with slugs.
Kids with slugs, yeah.
What were they going to do with the slugs? I guess this is the problem, as I'm not a kid anymore, and like I feel like kid me would have been like, oh hell yeah, slugs. The thing is, there were a lot of slugs down there.
Yeah.
The scene where they're picking the slugs, there are so many slugs.
Slugs are very gross. Hey, slugs are a kind of bug, aren't they? So we got our bugs for the movie.
He had to put, like, that's what I joked to you about. Like, I started up this movie and I was like, I knew it was a ghost movie. So I'm like, finally a movie by Guillermo Del Toro without a creepy bug in it. And then the first lines in the movie are an insect trapped in amber. I'm like, damn it, Del Toro.
Yeah. A ghost is a kind of bug, actually. Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I was fascinated by slugs, but that did not extend to wanting to touch them. So, I don't think I would have ever picked up a slug, although I did think they were cool.
I mean, I will say my cousin and I used to make a thing called gross stuff stew, which is like where we literally just like take an old butter cup that my grandmother would save when we were at my grandma's house and just put like mud and bugs and any gross crap we could find around the yard and just mix it together into this concoction.
Yep.
And then we didn't do anything with it. We did that. So
checks
I
out.
just need to reframe my mind into a kid who would absolutely see a slug on the ground, pick up the slug, and then put it in his like precious memories box with his comic book and his novel. And I'm like, ew, the slug's gonna ruin all
Yeah, I'm sure this slime creature will keep in the box. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, you're like, ew, but you're not like, that's implausible because
sure.
surely some kid somewhere would actually do that.
Yeah, I mean, the other kid tries to trade a comic book for a marble made of spit. So, and I mean, we never see him say no to the deal. So, like, he seemed kind of interested.
Yeah. I mean, it took a lot of work to make that marble.
All right, Matt, what else? Is there anything about I think you said there was a storyline that you didn't get in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, so it's played as a reveal when I'm going to remind myself of everyone's name, so I'm not just calling people like the old lady and stuff.
Carmen is the old lady.
So Carmen, it's played as a reveal. Like Carmen is boning down with somebody, and at first you're like, oh, it must be the old man because you just kind of think that's where you think that's what's happening in this story, and then shocking reveal, it's the young man Jacinto, who you already know has a fiance, and you're like, oh, what's happening here? What does this mean? And it's like, I mean, I get it plot wise, right? Like you reminded me before we started, like, okay, well, he's trying to get the keys, so that's why he's doing this
to break into the safe. Yeah.
But also, I don't think that's it. I think it's also like he wants. I think, I mean, she was the headmistress of the orphanage for some time, right? Is that?
Yeah, presumably she was his headmistress. Yes.
Then he probably has had like some kind of crush on her all this time, right? You can guess that at least. It's not implausible. But I guess what I was more curious about is like, why is she into him? Like, is it literally just what he says, where it's like she needs to get boned down by a young man because like she's really ashamed of it? It's like, okay, I get it. Like I'm not objecting to any of it. I don't find any of it implausible. I just don't understand what role it serves in the movie, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so if I had to guess, I think this is part of what it's doing. I think the concept of like secret love affairs and like love triangles is very present in the Gothic tradition. So if I'm Guillermo del Toro and I'm trying to construct this very Gothic movie but set in a more modern time, I think that it feels like to me like just like a tone thing, a trope like thing. He wanted to put this part in it. I agree that like I agree with everything you've said, that it's not the focal point of the story, and so it doesn't maybe tie into it perfectly, but I think it ties from a tone perspective that it's like, oh, there's like these secret love affairs and unrequited love and all these like very Gothic is very melodramatic, right? And I thought that part of the story had a lot of that melodrama, and I think that's what he was going for.
Okay.
I think you could maybe make an argument it could have slid into the overall theming a little bit neater. I think the part of it that does slide into it is Casares is his lust for Carmen and his unrequited love for her, and how Jacinto's like basically being in the spot that he wishes he could be in, like really dramatizes the tension between these two characters.
Yeah, because that's all there. It just didn't quite fully connect as hard as it maybe could have, I guess. Because like I love little moments like he's telling the boy how the people in the town are actually buying this liquor that's used as a preservative for dead babies, as a treatment for impotence. And then when the boy leaves, he like thoughtfully looks at the shot glass that he's poured himself and then drinks it. Because I mean, that's a great moment, because he's like this man of science who doesn't believe in it, but he's sort of you buy that in that moment. He's like, yeah, worth a shot, right? Because and it tells you kind of what he wants, right? What his priorities are.
I loved that scene though, because like this little boy comes to this doctor, this man, and says like, I think I saw a ghost. And he's like, oh really? Well, let me show you my dead baby in a jar.
Yeah.
It's just like, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's just the escalation there was perfect. And of course, we haven't talked about it yet, but that's where the name of the movie comes from, right? The Devil's Backbone is when Casares is showing Carlos this alcohol that's fermented in this dead baby. It's the spina bifida that killed this child, that they're calling the Devil's Backbone. And the idea here is that these are children that were kind of cursed by God, or cursed by the devil rather, unwanted and cursed by the devil. And I think that is thematically beautiful to this orphanage and all these people stuck in this orphanage, right? They're the unwanted ones, the undesirables that have been kind of carted away here.
That's great. I just loved how blasé the doctor was about it, where he's just like, yep, got these jars with dead babies in them.
He's just like, there's a fucking dead baby floating in this jar, and he's just like, oh, so you believe in ghosts, huh? Well, let me introduce you to my floating dead baby. Now, do you believe in ghosts? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. But yeah, just to continue on that thread, like there's the moment like after he, you kind of see him realize that the woman and Jacinto are having an affair. And then the next time he interacts with Jacinto, he's very cold toward him. And so that's all it's like, it's all there. It's such a weird criticism to be making, because I'm like, yep, he did all these things right. I just don't think I felt it.
Sure.
And I always hate it, because I'm like, I don't know what my criticism is. I don't actually know what I would do differently, other than
I will say it did not bother me as much as it did you. I do think it's fair to say it is one of the elements of the story, in a story where so many of these elements kind of weave together beautifully to make this pointed statement at the very end. I agree, it is one of those that doesn't quite mesh in as neatly. So I think it's one of those things where everything else is done so well that it makes the thing done slightly not as well look worse by comparison.
Yeah. You're putting together the puzzle, and the fact that it comes together so well 90% of the time really draws into relief the one part where it's like kind of a little bit awkward. Still functional, but a little bit awkward. So I'm fine with that. It's fine. Yeah.
Cool.
I like the gross other guys who sort of worked at the orphanage and then tried to steal the gold at the end.
Yeah, I like those guys too. I mean, I like them for the same way that I like the group of boys, right? Is that they're kind of built to be this kids riding bikes archetypal group, right? Like the one of them is named Pig. Just like the one of the other kids is named Owl. So it's like there is a kind of like rhyming scheme there where they're meant to be just a bigger group of kids and more dangerous. And this the horror of the world has given these people power to dole out suffering, basically.
Yeah, I like your framing of them as being sort of the older versions of the kids, because this idea that Jacinto, he wasn't born a monster, he was made into a monster by the things that happened to him. And you could say the same thing, like these evil men who are responsible for deaths and just wanted to steal the gold no matter what happened. I think they were planning to murder all the kids too. They were also made by the the harshness of the world that they grew up in, and that maybe this is what could be in store for our child protagonists if if I don't know if they're not able to stay on the righteous path somehow.
To escape.
Yeah.
And I think we're almost done here, but there's one shot I wanted to focus on, because I think it's one of the moments in which Del Toro does something really beautiful. It's when the doctor, it's after the explosion has happened and the doctor is sitting in his chair at the open window, kind of waiting for Jacinto and the rest of them to come back. It's actually where he dies in the end, but Del Toro does the shot of just like the open window and the vast expanse beyond it. And it's this brilliant shot that I think is paying homage to this one shot in the movie, the classic movie, The Searchers. You've probably seen it before, because it's just this classic shot of this cowboy kind of framed by an open door with this vast wilderness behind him. And it kind of shows, it demonstrates this way in which there is this vast expanse out there, and there's this inside, and those two things are separate, and that you can see that the camera allows you to see the barrier between those two things. And it kind of, to me, perfectly showed how, oh, he's trapped here. He's never getting out. He's completely trapped in this place. It's just this really, really beautiful shot that I kind of want to, I want to just like put side by side with the shot from The Searchers, because I think it's remarkable.
That's cool. I haven't seen that movie. Probably should, if it's a super important classic. But yeah, that's neat. I agree. I remember the shot you're talking about. So yeah, it definitely worked.
Yeah. Del Toro is so good, man, and he's only getting better. That's the cool thing. That's one of the things I love about doing this project, is we start with their first film and we see incrementally how they're just getting more confident, more skilled behind the camera. And a lot of it, the sad truth of I don't know if I call it sad. The truth of a lot of filmmaking is that it all takes money, and the more movies you make and the better you do, the more money you get, which allows you to do more things. And so not only are we seeing their skill progress, but we're seeing their budgets progress as they go. And so they're able to do more things. They're able to have a little bit more freedom of choice in the type of stories they want to tell and the ways in which they tell those stories.
I also feel like the stories are getting better, because we talked about he's been the writer of basically all three of these movies we talked about. And I think that I think this is the best written of them. I think like I said, like all of the, elements of character setting, plot come together to make, to tell a cohesive thematic story.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it was clear that he was a good writer from the other movies, but this is the one that has come together the most strongly. And I think, as far as I can recall, I think he just kind of continues to get better from here.
Yeah. I mean, we're charging headfirst towards Pan's Labyrinth, which I think is his masterpiece. And this is very much like a proto Pan's Labyrinth in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, not only is it a companion piece like we talked about, but I think just the type of story he's trying to tell here, I think he takes the lessons learned from making this movie and puts those lessons into Pan's Labyrinth and creates one of the greatest movies of all time. So I'm very, very looking forward to getting to explore that movie in this level of detail.
Yep. Me too.
I mean, this is an important moment for us, right? Because 3 movies in is when we can really start seeing patterns. You got 2, you could say it's a coincidence, but once you're up to 3, the pattern is laid. And I think we're seeing the Del Toro pattern pretty clearly here. I do think it's unfortunate that Mimic is also a movie that kind of stands apart from these other 2 for reasons that we got into during that movie. So it's a little harder to see the pattern, because that was such a different movie, and a movie made under a whole different system, that it definitely is like the black sheep of this trilogy of films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the best we can say about that is that I think he learned some valuable lessons about who not to make movies with, maybe.
Yeah, and I wonder, had that experience been a success for him artistically, whether a movie like this would have gotten made. Because I think one of the things we talked about during that is that it was his frustration with the Hollywood studio system and what they did to a project he was probably very excited about that kind of caused him to go home, to go back to Mexico and to really start working on and creating this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So his story, he's got his own ghosts, you could say.
Exactly. Mimic is just what is a ghost? Yeah. Is it a movie ruined by a Weinstein?
Yeah. Is it Harvey Weinstein standing? Yeah.
Dear God. Yeah. So that is The Devil's Backbone. Quite a good film. The next Del Toro movie we're going to be taking a look at is Blade 2, actually. So he dipped into the studio system, hated his time there, went back home, made the movie he wanted to make, and then he said, all right, let's try this again. and he's going to make a sequel to a movie. This is the only film, Blade 2 is the only film that is not written at all by Del Toro. Like in both Mimic and Devil's Backbone, he had co-writers, but Blade 2, he was not involved in the writing at all. So going to be a little bit different of a conversation for us, but still looking forward to revisiting that movie. I haven't seen that film in a long time.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk about the greatest superhero movie of all time.
Blade 2?
I mean, I'm joking. It's honestly though, I do remember that came out when I was in high school, and just like my whole friend group was just completely apeshit over that movie because it's delightfully gross and violent and just kind of horrific in a way that very much appealed to a whole bunch of 15-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved Blade, the first one.
Blade is great too.
I don't quite remember. I don't remember Blade 2 enough to remember what my opinion on it is. So I'm kind of looking forward to.
I definitely do. So that'll be a fun conversation.
Sweet, can't wait. So that will not be next though. We're going to take another week off to do a Council of Doof episode, but our Del Toro episode on Blade 2 is coming. Mm-hmm. Merry Christmas! It'll be our Christmas episode, I think.
Perfect.
Doof. All right, Matt, let's move on and let's talk about some TV. So last week we spent a little bit of time talking about The Mandalorian, and I think we both talked about how much we loved The Mandalorian. And there was a pretty big episode that came out the same day that conversation was released. And I thought we could talk about that a little bit. And I think you wanted to make some ridiculous comparisons to some other TV that you've been watching, right?
Yeah. I mean, let's just get that out of the way. Like, okay. So I had just been, I just talked about Mandalorian with you. I was talking about Mandalorian with Michael also. Like, I was just thinking a lot about the Mandalorian and how it does so many things well. And then I happened to have some free time on my hands, and I watched the first 2 episodes of The Queen's Gambit. And of course, because of where my head was, I was like, I kind of wish this had been kind of plotted more like The Mandalorian. It's Queen's Gambit is good, but it's no Mandalorian.
Of course, you said that to me, and it drove me immediately insane.
And yeah, it's just sort of set the tone for our whole week, really.
If
you consider where things went from there.
Little did we know, but it totally did. No. So first of all, I want to say, I as we said last week, I love The Mandalorian. Love it. Great show. I think comparing these two shows is absurd. Like they're trying to do completely different things.
They're not at all. Yeah. Well, I think the specific thing that I was noticing is like, I was thinking like, I really love the way The Mandalorian does things in this episodic way where you could almost watch them out of order. And yet there is a cohesive storyline that goes from episode to episode. I think that's great. I miss TV doing that. And that was what I liked about it. And then, of course, The Queen's Gambit is very, very much this thing that we've been doing for the last 5-10 years in TV, where you're basically telling a 10-hour movie, split up into pieces, and the episodes aren't really cohesive chunks of story. I mean, in some senses they are. They're not like they each leave you with a feeling of resolution, but the point of them, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, if you ask me like what happened in the first episode, what happened in the second episode, I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between the two. I just they blur together for me. And that's just kind of one kind of TV that's happening right now. And so you're right that it's absurd to compare the two. I just like the distinction was so salient to me because I've been thinking so much about Mandalorian, and I don't know. It's interesting to consider that like it seems like TV has taken this form now where it's like, well, yeah, these are kind of the two archetypal things that we're doing with TV right now: is long form, continuous mega movie broken into chunks versus serialized or rather episodic storytelling, which both of them have their pros and cons, and both of them have different things they're suited for, obviously.
Yeah, and I have been on the record of saying that I actually prefer the episodic or like the early 2000s kind of perfected by Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in my opinion, like mix between the two, where where the show definitely has this distinct episodic flavor, but there is an ongoing serial story, which is, I think, like Star Trek is not a show with an ongoing serial story, really, right? But there is this kind of, and I think The Mandalorian fits nicely into that thing where I agree with you. You could probably get away with watching episodes of The Mandalorian out of order. Not last week's though.
Mm-hmm.
I think last week's is an exception to that, but I do think that it is a meld. And while I agree, I like that better, I do think The Queen's Gambit is a show that does that in a way that annoys me less than a lot of the worst offenders in this. Like sometimes I feel like these shows, like the end is just completely arbitrary. Like they literally just shot it as a movie, just a super long movie, and then just arbitrarily picked a point to stop without any concern for like narrative propulsion or anything like that. I do think the Queen's Gambit, because I think it's a very well made show, does this a little bit better, but I do agree it firmly falls into that this is just an 8-hour movie type of TV show.
Yeah.
But see, the thing is, something I realized this week is that it's just chess Rocky, and because Rocky's my favorite film of all time, like that's why I'm in love with it so much, because it's literally just chess Rocky. It's a sports movie where the sport itself is less important than the characters, and it's really just a character study of this woman. And I adored that show. I want to watch it all over again and really spend some time diving into it, because I think it's beautifully directed. Really, really loved that show. But
really, really well executed. I think maybe my favorite thing about it right now, and I almost don't want you to tell me if this changes, but my favorite thing about it right now is that as far as I can recall, like 100% following the protagonist. There's not the B plot where we follow this other interesting character who we just met, and maybe there will be at some point. But like, I really actually like that we're not. I think that's one thing that I noticed, especially toward like the latter part of Game of Thrones, where it's like you have to jump between like these three different characters in three different parts of the world, and it loses all narrative propulsiveness because you're just like, wait, I was into what was happening with Arya, and now Jaime Lannister has to like remind us what's happening in the scene with some ham-fisted exposition, and then by the time I'm emotionally invested in this scene, we've already jumped to Sansa or whatever. It's I hate that, and this show is doing the opposite of that, and I really appreciate that.
I agree. And I won't spoil anything for you, but I totally agree with you there.
Can we just talk about what a great episode of Mandalorian it was, though?
Yeah. So here's the deal. Remember at the end of that conversation where I was telling you about all the things I was concerned the show was going to do? It did them all in the next episode that I watched the very next day, and yet it pulled it off. Like it was everything I was worried the show was going to do. Like we got a name. Okay, so spoilers for season 2, episode 5 of The Mandalorian to follows. So just want to make sure we say that.
Yeah.
We got a name for Baby Yoda, which I didn't give a shit about. It's an entire episode revolving around a character from the cartoons that I had no idea who it was. And we get a name drop of a villain that I think was expanded universe and then brought back into canon in the cartoons, I think. Didn't know who that guy was. Didn't really care either. I was expecting to hate this episode But I think, as you so accurately pointed out at the end of that discussion last week, these people know what they're doing, and they can do this in a way that makes it satisfying still. This is, I think, one of the only episodes that was not directed or not written by Jon Favreau. This was written by Brad Filoni, Dave Filoni. He's the guy who basically runs the Star Wars cartoons. Like, he's been the showrunner on every Disney Star Wars cartoon. So he's basically taken up like the expanded universe type stuff. It's all his baby now.
And did you know that he also is very central to Avatar: The Last Airbender?
I did not, but that makes a lot of sense.
and I actually have to thank Michael for telling me that, because Michael was the one who realized that at first and was like, I think this Dave Filoni character is behind a lot of the best stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it was his episode. He wrote it, he directed it. No idea who this character was. The main character of the episode, outside of the Mando, is, I don't even remember her name.
Ahsoka.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The Jedi.
I recognized her from like things. I've seen the cartoon version of that character that Rosario Dawson played in this episode, but I had no idea who she was.
Yeah. And it does. You didn't need to.
Because what they did once again is, they brought in all the stuff, but they told an isolated story. They told the same story they've been telling every week, which is Mando travels to a new planet, needs something from someone there. They say, okay, but you got to do this for me first. And he's like, okay. And then he does it. And then they tell that story. And like, we meet these characters as if we've never met them before. We get to know what their driving need is right that moment. And it defines their emotional stakes in the episode. And then we just execute on that and have a fun time. And that was this episode. And I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
I fucking loved it.
Yeah. I mean, I love that they brought the Jedi back to what Matt Freeman thinks the Jedi are supposed to be, which is basically samurai. And that's what she is, right? This episode is a samurai and a gunslinger liberate a small town from, from the iron fist of the the whatever it is, the warlord, which is extremely a trope. And as I've said, that's what this show is it's like just taking these great iconic, types of episode or types of story and just executing on them to the hilt. I usually get like, I don't know, like I've gotten so sick of all the Jedi shit. And yet this one still made me like, grin like a little kid because, she's running around like a ninja and cutting people in half. But like, it's not doing any of the stuff. Like there's no, I think you pointed out, like there's no super jumps and super flippies and annoying force pushes. It's all just like cool, scary, competent sword fighting basically.
Yeah. Well, and I think the most important part to me was when it came time for the duel at the end. We didn't go fucking ham with it. Mm-hmm. We just did like you were talking about, like a samurai duel. These are two people standing there just parrying and blocking, and the emotion behind the fighting was more important than the choreography of the fight. Yeah. And it was so fucking cool. And at the same time, the Mandalorian is talking with fucking Hicks, who is like Michael. Is it Michael Biehn? Is his name? I can't remember.
Wait, was that him? Was that who that is?
Yes, that's Hicks. That was fucking.
Oh my
Hicks.
God.
Yeah. So they're having this wonderful Mexican standoff that ends in this perfect way where he just lays down his weapon and like, nope, I don't care enough about this to fight you. Uh-huh. And then he tricks him though. Yeah. And then like that was so cool. It was so all great. So cool.
It's so great because like for a second you're like, oh no, he's gonna get the drop. Oh no, of course Mando saw it coming.
Of course not. Mando fucking owns.
Yeah.
And there is obviously all the Star Wars lore stuff. Like you told me that this character was actually a Padawan of Anakin, which is not something I knew at all. I think that is the one thing that I think helped me understand some of the emotion behind the episode that I didn't get on its own, which is fine because it didn't ruin the episode not having that piece for me. Yeah. But like her hesitance to want to train Grogu,
right?
Who I'm still calling Baby Yoda.
Well, sure.
call it Grogu.
Well, that's what's great is they give him a name, but then Mando is just calls him Kid for the whole rest of the show anyway. And it's like, I don't think Mando's going to change. I'd be surprised if Mando started calling him Grogu. Might happen.
Well, it's funny because apparently Mando got a name in the first season, and I've totally forgotten it. So I just call him Mando. So I think the same thing's going to happen with Baby Yoda. I subscribe to the conspiracy theory that they intentionally made these names shitty enough that people can just keep calling them Baby Yoda and not feel any grief about it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the gunslinger and the kid is what is the archetype. You don't that's his birth name, but he's given up his birth name now. He's the nameless Mandalorian, and the kid is. It doesn't matter what his name was. He's like everyone who knew his name is dead now, right? So it's. I do think it's intentional. I think. I mean, maybe there's some lack of understanding within Disney that the point of the character is to be nameless because they. I don't know, but it's.
I understand the need to give him a name and a little bit of background eventually. I mean, the thing I liked is that the background they gave him is the exact kind of shit that I would have rolled my eyes at in any other Star Wars property, where they kind of hint that it was Baby Yoda that was used in helping to clone Palpatine or something,
and or Snoke. Which
which
as soon as someone said that on Twitter, I was like, oh no! Luckily, I didn't think of that during the episode. So it was fine.
But even still, it still felt like an afterthought to me where this is not going to be the main purpose of the show is to get to a point where like Snoke clones. It was just, here's where he came from. And it's a little wink to you, people that caught that, but that's it. And and like the thing with the white colored lightsabers, like apparently that's like super important. I saw headlines and like read stuff that I just didn't understand at all. There's like something very important to the fact that like she's like, my understanding is like when the crystals are red, it's because they've been like poisoned or like something bad has happened to the kyber crystal to make it red, right? That's like the Star Wars lore or something. And so the white color is a purification, and it's like symbolic of like she's not just a Jedi, she's like a purified Jedi type thing. And I didn't know that, but like you got it because like they're white and they look different than any lightsaber you've ever seen. And so like they look special and they feel more important. And that's all that matters to me, man.
Yeah. Oh, another thing, and I only noticed this in a couple of moments, so I'm not even sure if my eyes were playing tricks, but the lightsabers had kind of this very faint stuttering to them where it reminded me of episode 4, like we don't really know what we're doing with special effects yet type, like not bad, but like like a slight intentional stutter where you can see that it's not quite lined up with the frames or whatever. And again, maybe I'm making it up, but like it definitely did not remind me of the way the lightsabers look in the sequel trilogy, where they just don't look the same at all anymore. Like they're not even trying to make them look the same anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I think the biggest compliment I can give this episode of the show is that it made me kind of want to go watch Clone Wars and Rebels, right? And I have not shown any interest in any of that stuff in the past. And so, I mean, good job, Dave Filoni. Like that's a big deal that I want to check these out now.
Yeah. Well, I think even just learning that Dave Filoni is the guy. I don't know to what degree he's responsible for Avatar: The Last Airbender, but someone central to Avatar: The Last Airbender was also central to these Clone Wars cartoons. Well, that suddenly raises my estimation of the Clone Wars cartoons.
Mm-hmm. So. It looks like I pulled this up while you were talking. It looks like he directed 9 episodes of that show.
Okay.
So I can't see any writing credits, but he was director and animation department, character design stuff. So yeah, cool. He seemed pretty heavily involved in it. So
yeah, somebody who gets it at least.
Yeah, it's like, fuck, they keep making good Star Wars shit, and it makes me want to look at more Star Wars shit. And I thought I was over this period of my life, but here we are.
They did their best to chase us away, but turns out, there's enough people that love it and that are not going to let go of it. So yeah, no, the name drop of the big villain at the end actually did make me squee also, because I read I haven't read a lot of Star Wars EU material, but I did happen to read the Timothy Zahn books when I was a kid, and so hearing that name was like so that's cool. That was cool for me.
See, I knew enough to know that was a name I was supposed to be doing that to, but that's it, you know.
Yeah.
Got nothing else. But that's the thing, is like, it works on us equally, right? Like you heard that and you got to gasp, and I was just sitting here like, this is a fucking cool fight, man. I love this episode. God, right. So good.
Yeah, I like that the sword fight at the end. Like, if one were not thinking about the show correctly, they might have said, well, why didn't she just force push her or force choke her or something? And it's like, well, the answer is because she actually doesn't want to kill her. She wants to disarm her so she can question her. There you go. Yeah. Like see, that's the thing, is like, it works regardless of what level you're watching it on. And I think that's amazing.
Sure. Yeah. I would just sigh at the people that said that, but
yeah.
All right. So that is The Mandalorian. I can't wait to watch the next one. I think we've got 3 more this season. Man, so exciting. All right, so next up, Matt, some big news in the theater industry that just came out today. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just, like, you and I spent half the afternoon talking about this, so I thought doing it on a recording might be a good thing. So it was announced today that Warner Brothers has made the decision that their entire 2021 movie slate will be released day and date in theaters and on HBO Max, the WB streaming service. So that's a big deal, right? That's not just like throwing. It had been previously announced that Wonder Woman 1984 was coming out on Christmas Day on HBO Max, but that's one movie. This is their entire slate. This amounts to probably over $1 billion of production expenses, right, that they've incurred to create these films, and they're just dropping all these on their streaming service. So that's a big momentous shift in the entire model of movie distribution.
It includes like Dune. I mean, it's everything, but it's worth for me. It doesn't become real until you actually name some of the movies.
Dune.
Until it's Dune, then it's real, right? Yeah, no, it's huge, and I think, just to be clear, it's only for this next year because they know that it's going to be crazy. And but yeah, it's a big even regardless of that, I think it moves people's expectations of what's normal. In a way that they might not really quickly come back from.
That's the kind of thing, is I totally agree that, like, I don't want to overreact to this thing, right? Because my initial gut reaction was to overreact and be like, fuck, everything's ruined. The movies are dead. That was my initial overreaction. The movie theaters are dead. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. And I do understand that this is just a year thing. But I also know people, and I know, like, coming back from this kind of shift, giving people a year to get used to the idea that some of the biggest movies ever, like Suicide Squad, like The Matrix 4, like Dune, like you said, In the Heights, the big Lin-Manuel Miranda musical that was supposed to release this past summer, like, getting these people used to this world in which they can see these movies at home on the same day they'd come out in the theater, it's hard to come back from. And I feel like what we're at least going to see is the other major studios follow this for 2021. Like, I think Disney's going to make an announcement here pretty soon that they're going to do the same thing, that Black Widow and any movie that was supposed to come out in 2021 will now be hitting Disney Plus.
At the very least, they're going to get a lot of data about how much money they can make this way, because, maybe, I mean, I'm definitely going to get HBO Max now. Maybe a ton of people are going to get HBO Max. Do we know if they're, maybe you already said this, do we know if they're just dropping the movies? Like, if you have HBO Max, you can watch the movie, or do you now have the right to buy the movie on HBO Max?
Nope, it's just available.
That's amazing. That's shocking, actually.
I think Disney's foray into that with Mulan blew up in their face, into a point where no other studio is going to do that anymore.
Which is interesting, because rather than charging nothing, you could try like $15.
Right.
I mean, I think most people would just be like, yeah, that's about how much I pay for a movie anyway, basically, when you consider concessions.
Yeah, I think it's the psychological factor of subscription service and an extra fee that pushes people into the I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
like,
that makes sense.
People just like emotionally, I'm already paying for the service, and you're going to paywall something on top of it.
Yeah,
that people don't like. So
yeah, I guess one thing I wanted to say is like there was just no shortage of takes on this on the Twitters today, and
Sure.
they ranged every. I mean, it was like every possible opinion you could have, and I guess I'm just kind of have a kind of a moderate position here relative to most people, where I'm like, yeah, I mean, probably some theater chains are going to declare bankruptcy, but in actuality, all that might really mean is that their assets get bought out and then they continue to operate potentially with even the same people in charge after the vaccine comes out. And, maybe some of them are wiped out completely. And I mean, I don't know. I can't predict that. I can't predict down to that level of detail.
Sure,
but I don't really think this is the end of theaters. I think there's going to be a rough patch for a year, 2 years. I think less than 5 years. I think like in 5 years, if we're not just going to the movies to see our movies, I'll be really surprised.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think the other interpretation that I've seen is this idea that HBO Max is actually like getting its ass kicked in the streaming wars. They spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of money to acquire a bunch of stuff on their platform, and it really hasn't paid off for them. I think the announcement they said is they have about 29 million subscribers, as compared to Disney Plus's 75 million, and they've spent about the same amount of money acquiring things. So you could make an argument that a studio which dumped a lot of money into this thing and hasn't seen the return is kind of desperate to build it up in any way possible. And they saw this opportunity that they knew, even going into halfway through 2021, movie theaters are not going to be things people really want to go to. And they saw this as a really good opportunity to just push money towards their streaming platform that's not performing the way they wanted it to, and hopefully kind of puff it up a little bit, pump it up with all this content. Because like you said, it's working. You're going to get it, right? You do not have HBO Max. You're going to get HBO Max so you can watch Dune. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to make that choice.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that we'll see how it works, but that makes logical sense. So we could just see this as WB's doing it, and they're the only company that's going to end up doing it because they are desperate to inject some life into the streaming service that's disappointing them. Whereas Disney Plus is looking at 75 million and is like, yeah, I'm cool. Yeah. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting watching how this has happened, right? Like we're kind of living in the middle of some history that's happening because I mean, I remember when we first started kind of talking about this general topic, it was like, well, we didn't really know what this was all going to look like. And now what I find is like, well, I'm not going to stop paying for Disney Plus as long as The Mandalorian is on. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to start paying for HBO Max for Dune, but then I'm probably going to watch Raised by Wolves, and then I'm probably going to watch some other show on there, and then I'm going to be like, well, I can't stop paying for HBO Max because they have this other show that I need to keep up with. And like they're going to successfully hook you. Each of these services is going to hook you with like their big main show, and then they'll also have a bunch of other stuff on there. And then we'll all just be, I say stuck, but it's of your own free will in all these different streaming services. And I mean, I can't really complain too much because now we have The Mandalorian. So
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it is, I think, just proven fact that like the hardest part with these streaming services is getting people to pull the trigger the first time, and then they tend to stick around because it is very easy as a human being living in a busy world to kind of forget about that $15 a month that like is automatically being pulled out of your account, that you're just not thinking about on a daily basis. like whether or not it's money you can afford or not. Like it's very easy to just kind of not aggregate all these little piecemeal subscriptions that you're paying for each month.
It becomes a volitional choice to unsubscribe. Instead of it's just default, and humans are really bad about defaults.
Right. Which is why the model has not been buy individual episodes of individual shows if you want to. Yeah. That's why the model moved away from that, because it's much more advantageous for these networks to charge an entry fee rather than piecemeal purchasing of things.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's funny. We were just talking about, the ridiculous idea of comparing Mandalorian and the Queen's Gambit, but it is kind of funny to notice, like, actually they do have one thing which makes them very much the same, which is that they're both shows that were basically commissioned solely for the purpose of a streaming service.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm not thrilled about all this, but I do think I was talking to you about this earlier today, and I wonder if, fast forward a year, vaccines out, then enough people have taken the vaccine, which I know is a pretty big if in a world where there's just random anti-vax people for no fucking reason. And we start to feel comfortable going back to the theaters. I do think there's going to be this mass cultural move of people of event stuff being more popular than it has been in a while. Like, I feel like over the past decade has seen the shift of people being able to do more and more things in their home, right? Like the internet, the streaming, Amazon, like food delivery services, all these things have like shifted to where you can stay in your house and get everything you need. And I do think people are fucking sick of being in their houses. And I'm really wondering if we're just going to see this mass cultural move where people want to go out to do things. They want to be outside, like events, concerts, just like going to the park, just like going bowling, going swimming at a community swimming pool, going to the roller skating rink, going to movies. Like, I think I really wonder if we're just going to like a trackable mass cultural movement that makes these things suddenly more popular than they have been in the past decade.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I used to take my kids to either like a museum or a zoo or something like that pretty much every weekend. And obviously haven't done that in almost a year now. I mean, many months, whatever. And I'm gonna go back at that with a vengeance, because I feel like I have time to make up. So that's just me. And then, on my own time, I'm just like, God, I just want to see another adult's face. So yeah, I'll probably go overboard for myself too, separately. So
yeah, man, it's gonna be a wild year though. The thing that I will always remember about this year, as far as the movie industry goes, is in March when Fast and Furious 9 announced they were moving 14 months. They were moving from March, or they're maybe 12 months. I think they were moving from May 2020 to May 2021. And I just remember me going, that's what? A whole year? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And now they look like the fucking geniuses that were ahead of the game on everything.
Yeah. In fact, they even called their final date pretty well too.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's just wild. Yeah. But it's going to be a crazy 2021. Like, it's weird because we're in December now, and I'm seeing, all the film critics do their annual end of year lists. And I certainly still have seen a lot of movies this year, just at home, but it just feels weird to look back on the year of film, which is a thing that we normally do at the end of this year. And I don't think we're going to do it this year because it just feels weird. It just doesn't, I don't know. It's not, I'm not going to say that this was a bad year for film, like, quality, because I think there were plenty of incredible movies that I saw this year that moved me and changed me and affected me greatly. But it was just not normal in any way, shape, or form. And I don't want to treat it like it was normal by just like saying, here's my top 10 list of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I probably saw about my average number of movies, 0.
Still will always remember my final film in the theaters ever which was Pixar's Onward. It was the last time I saw a movie in the theaters ever.
Yeah, mine was Ryan Johnson, Knives Out.
Knives Out. Okay.
Yeah, I managed to see Knives Out just before it was clear that no one should be going to theaters. I squeezed that one in.
Yeah, I think my wife her aunt every year buys her this really nice gift, actually, like a season pass for the two of them to this Dallas season of musicals at the Dallas whatever music hall, whatever. There's there's a season of musicals every year, and her aunt always buys her 2 tickets for that for the two of them. And so she actually she was in a musical in March, the night that they said no one should go out anymore.
Oh man.
Oops. Yeah.
Oopsie.
Wild stuff. But yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be a fun year. Hopefully better. The worst part for me is I've got 4 months till my kid comes, and these are the 4 months that in a normal year I'd be going to the theater as much as possible, knowing that the movie theater would be a place I'm not going to get to visit for a while, and I just can't. Just can't.
Yeah, I guess I have to take responsibility because I was listening to our best of the 2010s discussion, and toward the end of it, I was like, yeah, I think 2020 is going to be a great year. I'm really looking forward to it. So
you jinxed it.
Sorry, everyone.
You jinxed it. That's why I'm angry with you, Matt.
I think the combined psychic pressure that everyone put on 2020, because it was like, oh, it's 2020, get it? That's what caused 2020 to be terrible.
Fair. I was trying to do a transition there where I said, where I said that's what made me mad at you, but it's not the only thing.
It's not the only thing. Okay,
it's time to throw down.
All
right, Matt, explain why we're fighting.
Okay, so today, and this is not just been happening today. Actually, this has been happening for at least a week. That Twitter has been trying to jam down my throat these ads for Demon's Souls on the PS5, and I've been noticing them. And so I contacted Scott today, and I just said, Scott, Twitter keeps jamming these PS5 Demon's Souls ads down my throat, and they just look like shit. Like this is the sales pitch for the PS5 for the new console is a game that looks like shit. And then Scott disagreed with me for some reason.
And then I punched you in the face.
So I'm sending you, I told you I would send this to you. So now I told you I would wait, and now I'm sending it to you. I sent you the ad. This is the ad that I was talking about.
Okay.
When I contacted you. But I will say, I'd seen different ads, and all of the ads made the game look pretty shit.
Okay, this is it's 3 seconds long.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You agree this is a bad ad? It's a bad ad.
It's a terrible ad.
It's a terrible ad. But they've been throwing me ads all week, and it all looks terrible. It looks like nothing that makes me even close to wanting to try the game out, much less buy a PS5.
Okay, but here's the actual thing, though, that is the actual reality that exists in this world that we both live in. This game looks incredible. I do not like the Souls games. I am struggling through Dark Souls right now because Ruben and Elliot are doing a game club on it next week. And so I've been trying it, and I've quit 6 times, and I keep going back to it because I'm a masochist, and I do not like it. I do not like it. And I don't think I'm going to like this game either, but it looks just visually, it looks incredible. The lighting effects, the way in which we're talking about not just general lighting, but the way in which the lighting is reflecting off of surfaces. It is a game that is it's not even doing what all the things the PlayStation 5 can do, because this is how console generations work, that the longer the developers get to use the hardware, the better they get at sapping every little bit of power out of it. So we're very early in that stage, but it looks so good. And for you to say that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
I'm confused. Are you talking about the game you're playing, or
no?
So are you talking about games you're watching on Twitch?
I'm talking about Demon's Souls. I'm talking about everything I've seen from Demon's Souls.
Everything you've seen on the Twitch or on the whatever.
On Twitch or on YouTube or downloaded clips. Yes, I've downloaded a clip.
So after we had this earlier bitter argument, I looked on Twitch to find people playing Demon's Souls. The first thing I found was somebody who was stuck in a wall for 5 minutes. So that didn't help.
Bad sample selection.
Didn't help.
Bad sample selection.
I mean, when you draw a bead out of a bag and the first bead you draw is black, your conclusion is that there's a lot of black beads in there. So, but then the next
conclusion.
one I saw,
that's a bad conclusion.
Well, that's just statistics. But then the next one I saw, I was just like, God of War is better.
No, but it's like just objectively not. Like, okay, first of all, Demon's Souls is a remake of a game that came out in 2009, right?
Uh-huh.
So like, I don't know how they did the remake. I don't know, like, and again, it is not doing everything that the system is potentially capable of. Certainly not. But you are playing God of War on, you do not have a PS4 Pro, correct? You just have a PlayStation 4. See, you don't even know.
I might have a PS4 Pro actually, but go on.
You're infuriating. It is not like, God of War is a beautiful game. I don't want to take anything away from God of War. It is a beautiful game. The lighting effects, the cool ray tracing shit. It's running in 60 frames per second. It is not. God of War is not better looking than this game. I'm sorry, it's not. It's just not.
I mean, okay, so everything that I've seen about this game so far has been in a dark, dank cave, basically. Like, and I flipped around on Twitch. I'm not saying I've seen everything. I'm not saying I've seen the whole goddamn game, Scott. But flipped around on Twitch for a bit. Flipped around to a few different streamers. It was all in a dark, dank pit. You can't see what the fuck's going on. There's an enemy there. There's some kind of amorphous, shapeless thing. It doesn't matter because it's dark anyway. I mean, I guess your character model looks kind of fine. It's fine, whatever. I mean, I also have said on record that games have looked fine since 2004. So I don't. It's like the thing about God of War that is most salient about God of War. It's like it's bright and vibrant and colorful. Maybe if I saw the parts of this game that you can actually see, then I would feel differently. I just feel like
your monitor is just not set to the correct settings.
Maybe it just seems like a really bad game to be using to sell your platform. Like, this was the only point I had at even bringing it up to you in the first place. Is like if you're trying to tell me that I need to go buy your new $500 console, please don't use the game that looks like it was filmed in my basement with the lights off as your ad. And the thing is, I know that they released that big trailer where they showed a whole bunch of other games, and those all look great. Okay, I'm not saying the PS5 is shit. I'm just saying this ad actively makes me not interested in buying a PS5.
Well, so first of all, I don't think using a 6-second Twitter ad, which is compressed all the shit because it's Twitter's compression algorithm, is
fuck the PS5.
Look, I don't give a shit about the PS5 right now because there's not really anything on I want to play except for that Spider-Man game that I could also get on the PS4. Like, early console adoption sucks because there's not enough good games on it. And yes, I agree that making the flagship game of your console launch a remake of a game that came out in 2009 is not, like, it's not great, but it's just objectively wrong that the game doesn't look good. Like, it's just, you're just wrong.
All right. The listeners are going to need to point me to some videos that show what this game can look like, because
your eyes aren't working.
I just can't. I mean, I could show you the streams I saw and you would be like, well, yeah, but that's just because that's in a dark room. And I'd be like, well, yeah, I guess so. But show me it not looking like it's garbage and I'll agree with you.
If your complaint is just that the game is dark, then, I mean, yes.
Well,
like, you're in a lot of caves and shit.
If the whole game is that dark, I'm like, well, why did I need a $500 console for this, right?
I mean, you don't. Like, you literally don't. Okay. You can play the 2009 version of the game if you want to play it. Like, there's no reason to buy the PS5 for Demon's Souls.
I guess this is all moot because when God of War 5 comes out for the PS5, I'm probably just going to have to get a PS5 because I'm obsessed with God of War now.
Yeah, and it's going to look real good, it's going to look great.
It's going to look probably better than God of War 4, which already
certainly
looks perfect, literally perfect, and couldn't be improved. So,
yeah, except it won't have. Here's the other thing: the big the big leap in the console generation from the PS4 Pro, if that's indeed what you have, to the PS5 is not so much in graphical fidelity. I mean, it can run ray tracing, which is their big thing, which is light, like how light reflects and how the light rays trace.
Yeah. Lighting and reflections are going to look realistic.
Yeah. It can run in 60 frames per second, but the biggest thing is a thing that's not actually new for PC gamers, which is that it has solid state drives and load times are going to be incredibly improved because there basically are no load times in any of the launch games right now. So yeah, I mean, like if you're expecting to see like a Nintendo to Super Nintendo Switch or like Super Nintendo to N64 level of graphic enhancement, we're just not there anymore. Like it is much more incremental in that kind of stuff these days.
I mean, the load times thing is actually pretty cool. And I remember them talking about this because, I mean, even God of War, which is a game that I think deals with like loading between areas in probably the most seamless way I've ever seen in any game.
You mean crawling through those cracks?
Yeah. But yeah, you still know you're being hindered artificially, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the big selling point for the PS4 is that PS5, sorry, is that that's going to be, you know, maybe not literally eliminated, but reduced to the point where games don't have to have that feeling of kind of areas are kind of separated from each other in a fake way.
Yeah, I think so. I do. I mean, that is the thing that is going to be the most exciting about this is the ways in which developers can design without those limitations. Mm-hmm. And you're just not going to see that in a remake game. Sure. Regardless of how incredibly beautiful it looks objectively. You're wrong and I hate you.
Yeah, I mean, I get, you know, what's funny is like what am I trying to say? Like it even a dark cave scene with ray tracing is gonna be way better than a dark cave scene without ray tracing, because the way lighting behaves, I mean otherwise you're dealing with like these very simplified point sources and bitmaps and so forth, where it's like, yeah, I mean, if you try not to notice that that's not quite right, then you won't notice. But ray tracing is going to make that look like, oh, that's just how a flame would kind of dance around on the walls of this cave. And so yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's all in there. I'm you know, just maybe my monitor is miscalibrated.
I mean, also like even Twitch has a little bit better of a compression algorithm than YouTube, but even so, like it's still you're still watching streamed video of stuff. It's just not going to look as good as it will on your TV, right?
Yeah.
But I think the most frustrating thing is that, like, apparently, at least for the Spider-Man game and maybe for Demon's Souls, you can either play at 60 frames per second or you can have ray tracing on. You cannot do both, which is weird. I'm assuming they'll eventually get to a point where games will allow both those things turn again as they get more efficient in their development and understand the system better. I think people will get better, but it's so weird to me that, like, especially I think Jim Sterling made this joke where they said that, like, if your slogan is gameplay without limits, and then your launch games put a limit on you where you have to choose between two things, you're not doing great.
I mean, yes, I get it. I mean, real-time ray tracing is a pretty fantastic thing to have. Like it's the sort of thing where I've in a sense been dreaming about it since I was a teenager, ever since I kind of learned what ray tracing was. And I mean, part of me didn't think we would ever actually get it. So I'm pretty psyched to see what that actually, you know, what they end up being able to get out of that.
I hope they're not just doing this and then they're going to be like PS5 Pro in 4 years. That's like, now you can do both. No need to choose between 60 FPS and ray tracing. You get both if you buy this new $400 system. I mean, like, it's the video games industry. I could totally see that happening.
I mean, surely. I mean, these things are just going to keep getting better. Like the GPU thread count is exactly the kind of thing that would lead you to be able to do ray tracing more, you know, effectively and quickly. So and that number is just going to keep going up. Like that's kind of the cool thing is people say that we've fallen off of the curve of Moore's law, but that doesn't really matter here because you can just keep cramming threads onto a GPU. I don't know about forever, but I mean, you can just keep doing that. So
it's crazy thread counts, like Egyptian sheets thread counts. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. You've got a 12 by 12 foot console just crammed with threads.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time for video games. I think it's really cool. I'm pretty excited about this generation. And I mean, it's okay that you're just wrong. And I'll never forgive you for this.
Well, I think that you need to get your eyes examined for...
We're so bad at actually being mad at each other.
We tried. We tried.
We did.
I did my best. Look, this is why we don't argue, okay?
All
right, folks.
All right, that is all we had for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on why Matt is wrong on the studio system, on Mandalorian or the Queen's Gambit, or most importantly, on The Devil's Backbone, which is a conversation that it feels like we had 3 days ago instead of just an hour ago, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so that you ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Yes, and you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find our book club, which actually will be having another episode tomorrow, or today, if you're listening to this the day it came out, the 4th of December. We will be talking about Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed at 9:30 p.m. over on our YouTube channel. So if you want to join us for that conversation, please do. Matt, I have never been more intimidated to talk about a book than I am for this book, because
God.
I feel like it's just going to be two fucking idiots talking about a genius is what I feel like.
Yeah. I think when I finished this book, I just tweeted, every Le Guin book needs to just have a preface page which just says Le Guin is smarter than you.
Oh, really? That's actually my first page actually just says that.
Oh, well, they listened to my suggestion. Good.
Yeah.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast, the Doofcast, on Apple Podcasts, because every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the stuff we're doing here.
Yeah, that's right, folks. And as I said earlier, we are taking a break from our Del Toro series next week because we are looking at another one of our Council of Doof episodes. These are the episodes of our show where our council on Patreon, that's patreon.com/doofmedia, votes collectively and recommends a film for us to do an episode on. And they have brought to us next week the film Starship Troopers. Man, I love talking about this movie. So yeah. I don't think you and I have ever done an episode on this movie before.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we've ever talked about it. And I already know this is going to be fun.
Yeah. So we will be meeting next week to talk about Starship Troopers. So make sure you watch that film as well, because after we talk about it next week, we're going to turn it over to you folks and make you vote on whether it should be put into the Doof canon of the greatest films of all times. Times is. So watch Starship Troopers, and we will see you all next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.
Also, Matt, you're wrong. Last word. Got it.